2, 3, 4. Wine of the week. This is your wine of the week. What's the wine you got this time? It's the wine of the week. Woo! Hey everybody, welcome to Niagara Wine Videos. I'm Brad and I bring you the story behind Niagara's finest wines, and this, my friends, is your wine of the week. And this week's wine comes from one of my favorite little wineries here in the Niagara region, located really in the Jordan area, I suppose, and it's from 13th Street. So there's the label there. This is their older labels, the original labels actually. 13th Street Winery. Used to be owned by 3 lawyers, you know, kind of as like a hobby, and then they recently sold it to some more serious, wine connoisseurs that really have taken it to the next step and invested quite a bit of money, hiring some really talented people. This comes from the 2009 vintage, which, the weather in 2009 was, kind of cold and rainy, overcast. Really good conditions, though, for varietals like Pinot Noir and Gamay. Although it's extremely challenging, to make sure that you ripen the fruit and keep the rot away and harvest at the right time. If you have the talented people like 13th Street does, you're going to come away with a very good quality wine. And the winemaker at 13th Street Winery is a fellow by the name of Jean-Pierre Collat. And Jean-Pierre actually originates from Burgundy, France, and that's where he got his start as a winemaker and all his experience. And Jean-Pierre Collat very quickly became one of the very best winemakers in Burgundy, France, in the region of Chablis, where they make this really, world-class Chardonnay. It's really fresh and flinty. It's got, if you ever had a Chablis, it's just completely different than any other wine on the planet. So I encourage you to go try a Chablis. But Jean-Pierre Collat was making some of the best Chablis in the world. One year he made a wine that was so good that the Wine Spectator actually picked it, to be its top wine of the year, out of their top 100 every year they come out with. Jean-Pierre won literally the top spot for the best wine, Wine Spectator, #1 wine of the year, and that's quite an honor. That's like, if you equate it to a golfer, some of the best golfers in the world never get a hole-in-one. But every golfer wants to. Every golfer wants to get that hole-in-one, right? No matter how good you are, if you don't have a hole-in-one, somehow you feel like you're not complete. Now this is kind of like that. If you win the #1 wine in the world, picked by Wine Spectator, that is like your hole-in-one. Okay. So some winemakers spend their whole life making some of the best wines in the world, but they're never picked for the Wine Spectator #1 wine of the year. And so that's quite an honor. That's Jean-Pierre. He's a hole-in-one winemaker. And that is what makes the wines at 13th Street so special. And that's what makes this Gamay Noir really, 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 really well-made wine. It's coming from one of the best Burgundian winemakers in the world. And he's implemented these Burgundian techniques and this Burgundian, sensibility, state of mind, love, experience, whatever you want to call it. That's what Jean-Pierre Collat brings to the table. And when you taste this Gamay, this Old Vines Gamay Noir from the 4 Mile Creek appellation, you really do get a sense of a Burgundian Beaujolais. It comes from a sandstone vineyard, which is basically a sandy vineyard with stones mixed in it. The idea there, the stones are supposed to keep the vines warm at night when it gets cool, because the stones sucked up the heat from the sun. It's Old Vines, this bottle of wine here. Now, Old Vines, and in Beaujolais, usually says Via Vines. So if you see Via Vines on the bottle, that purely just means Old Vines. There's really no rule to what makes a vineyard old, what makes old vines. Some people say it starts at 25, other people say 35, other people say 45. This vineyard that these grapes came from is 30 years old. So So they've called it Old Vines on the bottle because really there's no rule, right? Now I tend to think of humans. What, you know, when I was 25, was I old? I don't think so. When I was 35, was I old? I don't think so. I think I'm starting to feel old. Maybe I'm maturing, but I'm not old. 45, okay, now maybe I'm starting to feel old because I think 50 is old. So in my mind, 45 to 50 would be considered old vines. So this comes from definitely an older vine, a maturing vine. Not so sure it's old, but what old vines do, they produce less fruit and more of the flavors and minerals that the vine are sucking up in the ground gets concentrated in those berries. A young vine produces twice as much fruit as an old vine. So think about that. There's much more flavor complexities concentrated in the grapes of old vines, and that's why it's better. So when you see old vines, you know it's a much more complex, concentrated grape, and that's why it's good. Most people just refer to it as Gamay, Gamay Noir. The Gamay grape originates from Burgundy in France. And, you know, way back in the 15th century, you know, one of the duches, the rulers of Burgundy, didn't like Gamay as much as Pinot Noir, because those are the only two grapes predominantly grown in Burgundy, is Pinot Noir and Gamay. And he said, you know what, rip out all these vines and plant them south. So that's what they did. They ousted the Beaujolais, or sorry, the Gamay grape to the region which is known now as Beaujolais. And this is where it grows and produces some of the best wines in the world, in my opinion. On some of the slopes where they get better sunlight during the day and they have nicer, maybe more mineral-rich soils, these location sites are referred to as Cru Beaujolais. So they make like the very, very best Beaujolais you can get in that region. And some of these wines, like I said, they're mind-blowing. They're so good. They're so structured. They're so age-worthy. Just really, really good wines. And the price points on these Cru Beaujolais can go all the way down to like $15 a bottle, and they only go as high to like I think the highest one I've ever seen is like $25, $26. So you know they're not crazy price like you would get Pinot Noirs. It can go up to all the way to like $7,000 a bottle. So you're getting really, 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 really extremely good quality and value in Beaujolais. Now, in the New World, referring to, you know, say the United States, Canada, for instance, Gamay is growing as a really, you know, light, fruity, table type wine. You know, people buy it because it's inexpensive and it's light and tannin. They can drink it during the day. You can chill it. It's kind of a less serious wine. And some of the more serious producers in cool climates, like here in Niagara, are finding out that, you know, if they put the time and effort into it, they can make these really structured Gamay wines that are similar to those Cru Beaujolais. So that's exactly what 13th Street has done. They're one of the few producers, only maybe 2 or 3 other producers really taking Gamay serious here in the Niagara region. Our climate, I think, is definitely suited towards Pinot Noir, Gamay, and Gamay. So this is a really good varietal that I'm glad that they're taking time to you know, putting effort into it, making some really serious Gamay wines. This one here has some really, really nice smoky cherry and violet flavors. You know, in Cru Beaujolais, you always get violets and flowers and rose petal and, you know, potpourri, almost perfumed, right? And you got that with this wine. But also that Burgundy brings, which makes these Burgundian Beaujolais wines so special, is this earthy qualities, right? These wet mud, mushroom, twigs, leaves, you know, these earthy flavors, as if you were running down the forest, you know, when you were a kid and you tripped over a root or something, you fell on your face, scraped yourself up, and you got, you know, like mud and dirt and twigs in your mouth, right? That's kind of what you get when you taste this. The first tasting note I got was like wet mud, right? And then that's followed by these really neat cherry violet flavors that you always get kind of in really well-made Gamay or Beaujolais. So this definitely has a lot of Burgundian qualities to it. It's also got that, you know, old world charm where it's got incredible structure and balance and finesse, right? You always get that from the old world wines. They're never, you know, over fruity and lazy or goopy in your mouth. The acidity is always kept really, you know, tight, nice backbone of acidity, which makes you want to drink more. It keeps the wine fresh. So this wine here has got so much Beaujolais love in it. I think everybody needs to seek it out. If you've never had a top shelf Gamay, or what 13th Street calls a Gamay Noir, you've definitely got to try it. I think it's really going to blow your mind. This wine is so complex in so many different ways, but you got to know what you're getting into. You know, this is not your typical fruity, oaky, caramelly wine that a lot of people are used to, you know, from New World wines. This is a real old world Burgundian funky wine that's going to give you fruit with, you know, a handful of mud in your mouth and you know, a whole bunch of other things like hickory smoke, twigs, leaves, black pepper, all that kind of stuff. So definitely check this out. This is your wine of the week, 13th Street 2009 Sandstone Old Vines Gamay Noir.